This drum is full of invisible people. Their voices are its singing. It is a very old drum, a drum very sacred. The circle of the earth is the head of a great drum. With the day it moves upward, booming. With the night it moves downward, booming. The day and the night are its song. I am very small as I dance upon the drumhead. I am like a particle of dust as I dance upon the drumhead. Above me in the sky is the shining ball of the drumstick. I dance upward with the day. I dance downward with the night. Someday I shall dance afar into space like a particle of dust. Who is the drummer who beats upon the earth drum? Who is the drummer who makes me to dance his song?
Théâtre's life captures a century of colorful history, and her values are timeless. They will live on forever. A respect for one another, a respect for our planet. Her values are timeless.
Théâtre's theatrical career began, if you can imagine this, she would entertain her friends at old OCW in the evening, telling them tales that her father told her. You know, in the Indian culture, things weren't written down too much. There were storytellers. And in the evening, that's what you did for entertainment. The storyteller told stories, and her father always did that with their family.
If you are a storyteller, you must tell the stories that are within you. The stories demand to be told, and that is part of the mystery and the power of a storyteller.
Usually the crier would go out about the camp in the early morning, and he would shake his rattle, and he would wave his turkey feather fan, and he would call out to his people, hey, hey-ya, 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 ho. And you would see those old men stop in their tracks to listen. And the old women, they would come to their looking east doorway to hear the news of the day. And perhaps he would say, along with the other news that he gave, tonight the storyteller will be at his fire, and everyone is welcome. So, when darkness spread over the land, you would see the people coming from all directions to the storytelling fire. After a while, when silence gathered, the storyteller would begin. Listen, my children, I will tell you a story. When the world was yet young, there was but one man upon it. The Great Spirit had sent him down to keep the world company, it looked so lonesome. And the man walked up and down the world, and he was lonesome too. And the Great Spirit, seeing this, sent to the man a son. And the man called his son Laka, meaning pine. The father and the son walk up and down the earth, all over the face of it. They found it good, but it was too cold. There were no trees to shelter them. There was no wood with which to make fires. There were no grasses and flowers to make the world beautiful. And they talked about this, and one night the young brave had a dream, and he told it to his father. And he said, I think it will be through sacrifice that beauty will walk upon the earth. I will give myself to our great spirit, that you may live, and all those who follow. He will send you companions on the trail, and he'll make the world beautiful for man. And the young boy climbed to the top of the tallest mountain, and there he fasted until the ghosts called him, and his father buried him on the highest cliff. And from his grave sprang the first pine tree, and from that all the other beautiful pine trees in the world. And my people say, if you will listen, you can hear those pine trees murmur laka, laka, laka. It is Laka calling to his people. And they say, if you have any troubles, and you tell them to the pine trees, they will always comfort you. And that is the end of the story.
Tayata was born in Tishomingo, Oklahoma, the historic capital of the Chickasaw Nation. Her dad was the last treasurer of Chickasaw government before statehood. The Chickasaws established themselves in what was then called Indian Territory in the late 1830s. After many years of existence as a tribal government, the United States settlement began to move west, and laws were passed that allotted the land that basically was intended also to destroy tribal government. At a time when perhaps we needed it the most, Tayata perpetuated the Indian heritage and the culture. At a time when it was the thing to do to suppress the Indian culture, she did just the opposite. She was dedicated to continuing that heritage.
Most of the Indians at this period had both an Indian name and an English name. My father's name, he went by the name of Thomas Benjamin Thompson. And so I was Tayata Thompson all through college. And, but after I left college, I shed the Thompson and became known as Tayata. It actually should be Tayata Ohoya, which means bearer of the morning woman. The ending is Ohoya, but I never used it because it was all people could do to remember Tayata. So I left off the Ohoya, I left off the Thompson, and became known as Tayata. I was born down near Tishomingo. Tishomingo was our old Chickasaw capital town. It was in that little town that I went to my first little day school, little one-room school, all Indians, and we had, for a teacher, she'd been down to Bloomfield Seminary, and she was a cousin of mine, and she taught us our first ABCs, and then I went to Bloomfield Seminary. My older sister was down there in school, so of course I was the next in line to go. And we had, at that time, among the Indians, among our Indians, we had schools for boys and schools for girls. And so our school was just across Red River into Oklahoma, into Indian Territory or Oklahoma, whichever it was. And after that, I came back to Tishomingo because my people moved into Tishomingo, so we could stay at home and go to school there. And so I had my high school in Tishomingo. And there I began to have, just a little ambition to do something. I had a teacher come there, Miss Muriel Wright, and she was Choctaw Indian, and she taught me history, and she really inspired me to want to make something of myself. And from Tishomingo, I went to the Oklahoma College for Women.
I feel I have a little bit in common with Teata because I too went to OCW. And Teata is our most famous graduate. We had such a wonderful teacher, Frances Densmore Davis. She inspired Teata to learn the stories of her people and to tell them. Teata was on Broadway in the Trojan Women, but she found that her niche was telling the stories of her people. One of the most interesting parts of my life has been the last 8 years, which I have served as a member of the Board of Regents for USAO. Now you wonder, what is USAO? It's the University of Science and Arts of Oklahoma. Now, it wasn't called University of Science and Arts of Oklahoma in 1919. It was called OCW, Oklahoma College for Women. After graduation from OCW in 1919, Teata had the opportunity to do Chautauqua.
About this time, I met Thurlow Lurance, who, the composer of Indian music, and he had been told that I did some very lovely Indian programs. And so he came down to see me at Tishomingo and wanted to know if I would consider going on a summer circuit of Chautauqua. And he told me what Chautauqua was, and that he'd have 2 other Indian girls with me, and he'd build the program around what I could do, and I would be the center of this program. And I decided to try it. I thought this would be a great occasion, and my father he wasn't exactly carried away with the idea because I'd always been a protected Indian girl, but he knew I didn't talk with strangers very much and everything, so he decided I could go. And that was a great experience for me in many, many ways. It enlarged my voice, it helped my diction. I had many different types of audiences, and I was seeing the whole country. It was a great thing. And also, I was making a little bit of wampum, and I needed that to go to Carnegie Tech. I had very little to work with, and so I had to make money on the side, some way or other. And then I went on to Carnegie Tech and had a very wonderful 1 year there. And from Carnegie Tech, with many grand experiences, but then from there I went to the Broadway stage.
She went there, but always tugging at her, and always the thing that she liked to do best, and the thing that people responded to most, was whenever she told the stories of her people.
And I decided then that my love was the folklore of my people. I simply wanted to give the best performance and in the best light that I possibly could.
She had a long career, and I think to this day, if she were physically well enough, she could tell those stories better than any storyteller that I've ever heard. I've had people who just met her that just feel the pure beauty of her soul and her spirit.
Let it be beautiful when I sing the last song. Let it be day. I would stand upon my 2 feet singing. I would look upward with open eyes singing. I would have the wind to envelop my body. I would have the sun to shine upon my body. The whole world I would have to make music with me. Let it be beautiful when thou wouldst slay me, O shining one. Let it be day when I sing the last song. Hey, 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 ah, hey, 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 ah, hey. Hey, 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 hey.
Eleanor Roosevelt learned of Théâtre because Théâtre had performed in upstate New York. They became friends, and Théâtre was invited to perform at the governor's mansion.
And while he was governor there, Mrs. Roosevelt christened a lake for me at Bear Mountain, New York, Lake Théâtre. And after Mr. Roosevelt became president, I was invited to give the first program at the White House under his administration. It was a great experience there because I spent the night, I was invited to spend the night, and I was given the Lincoln rooms, and I slept in the Lincoln bed. She asked me which room I would prefer, 2 or 3, and I said, oh, the Lincoln room. And so that was a really wonderful experience for me. It was the hugest room and the hugest bed I ever saw in my whole life.
Well, one of the most astonishing things about Théâtre's career is the fact that 75 years ago, she did what many contemporary storytellers are trying to do, even as we speak. She moved the traditional art of storytelling from that of a folk tradition into that of a fine art. Many people don't know this, but Théâtre was one of the first to work in an area that can now be called pan-Indian. She told not only the stories of the Chickasaw people and those stories that she learned as a young girl, but she incorporated, because of her love for all Native American peoples, she incorporated stories that came from the woodland Indians, from the Southwest, from the Southeast, from very many parts of the United States and Canada.
This next little story is an entirely different kind. It's a romance story from the Seneca Indians of New York State. Once there was a young maiden, and who lived all alone beside a stream. And she said to herself one day, I'm old enough to get married. So she oiled her hair, and she painted her face. And she went down to the stream, and she looked in, and she saw how beautiful she was. And she said to herself, I'm good looking enough for any man. And so she walked down the banks of the river. After a little bit, she came to a place where there'd been a camp. She sat down upon a log, and she began to sing. And she sang, anybody around here want a wife? Anybody around here want a wife? Anybody around here want a wife? And somebody answered, I want a wife. I want a wife. I want a wife. What shall we live on? What shall we live on if we live together? We will live on hawthorn berries and roots. Oh, I couldn't live on hawthorn berries and roots. That's not good enough for a nice girl like me. And she walked on down the banks of the river. Well, the sun had been traveling across the sky trail, had reached about the middle of the sky. And it was hot, but she find nice shady tree, and again she sing her song. Anybody around here want a wife? Anybody around here want a wife? Anybody around here want a wife? And somebody answer, I want a wife. I want a wife. I want a wife. What shall we live on? What shall we live on if we live together? We will live on grass. I couldn't live on grass. Grass is much too coarse for a nice girl like me. And she walked on down the banks of the river. And she think if she gonna get husband that day, she got to hurry up. So one more time she sing that song. Anybody around here want a wife? Anybody around here want a wife? Anybody around here want a wife? And somebody answer, I want a wife. I want a wife. I want a wife. What shall we live on? What shall we live on if we live together? We will live on seeds. Oh, I like seeds. Seeds are nice and soft and tender. He was very much pleased when he heard her sing that. So he came and sat down upon the log beside her. He said, "Did you understand what I said we'd live on if we lived together?" "Yes, seeds. I like seeds." He was so pleased with her answer, and she was so pleased with him, that they flew off down the banks of the river together, because they were the first birds of spring.
She was particularly interested in and is famed here in Oklahoma for her what are sometimes called the little stories, these little teaching tales. And she liked the outdoors, and so her stories are about birds and very simple, sweet issues and sweet tales of what happens to people.
In a holy place with a God, I walk upon the summit. I am old. I have walked along with gods. Soon I shall find the trail of beauty, and with a God walk down into the valley.
In everything, she sees beauty. And that's what she's taught me through the years, is not to look for the ugly things, but to look for the good in people and in the things around us.
She tells these wonderful Indian stories, which are an inspiration to all of us.
She is a woman who grew out of the soil of Oklahoma and carried to Oklahoma, the United States, and indeed other countries, the richness of Native American tradition.
She is a Chickasaw treasure. We owe her so much that we'll never be able to repay her.
She set examples for us of what to be the best that we can be, to look the best that we can. Always, Tiara will be alive for me.
Plenty. Hey, 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 ya, 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 ya. Kiachim manador, blow on Abitobi. Many wings, wings of teal, wings of mallard, wings of green and blue. My little lake lies waiting, singing for her blustery lover, dancing on the golden stranded shore, with many little moccasins, pretty little moccasins, beaded with her silver sands and with her golden pebbles. And upon her gentle bosom lies Manomen, sweetest wild rice, green and yellow, rippling blade and rustling blossom. Haye, blow on Abitobi, planted duck, ho, planted duck, ho, planted, planted duck, oh, oh. Hey, 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 hiya, 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 hiya. Kiachi manador, I place this pretty duck upon your hand, upon its sunny palm, and in its windy fingers. Hiya, blue and beautiful is he, beautifully blue. Though his throat is choked with wood, and he honks not on his pole, and his wings are weak with hunger. Yet his heart is plenty good. Hi-yah! His heart is plenty good. Hi-yah! 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 His heart is good. My heart, like his, is good. My tongue talks straight. Oh. I'd always, all my life, been interested in the folklore of my people. I can't remember the time when I wasn't proud of being an Indian. This drum is full of invisible people. Their voices are its singing. It is a very old drum, a drum very sacred. Circle of the earth is the head of a great drum. With the day it moves upward, booming. With the night it moves downward, booming. The day and the night are its song. I am very small as I dance upon the drumhead. I am like a particle of dust as I dance upon the drumhead. Above me in the sky is the shining ball of the drumstick. I dance upward with the day. I dance downward with the night. Someday I shall dance afar into space like a particle of dust.